A very warm welcome to the World of Lord Russell podcast talk show. And today's show is Buchler Scores for Tottenham Hotspur, which captures the life of a British businessman and entrepreneur. He is a passionate advocate of the sport of football and Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. He is best known as a practitioner in the field of financial restructuring, operational turnaround, and corporate recovery. He is closely associated with Tottenham Hotspur Football Club and, of course, the former vice chairman from 2001 and 2006, working alongside Lord Alan Sugar. Not forgetting, he is a lifelong fan of English National Opera, which became deputy chairman in 2006, a position he held for 10 years. Yes, folks, it gives me immense pleasure to welcome onto the show David Buchler. Welcome to the show, David.
Thank you. That's very kind of you, Rosa. It's a wonderful introduction.
Thank you very much. And of course, it would be your life has been quite a fantastic life to date, and it will continue to be one as well. So, just absolutely superb to have you on the show. It really is, David. Wonderful. So let's start, David. Let's start from the beginning of your professional life. You were educated at Highgate School in London and entered into the accountancy profession in 1970 as an articled clerk, or best known as a trainee chartered accountant with Bernard Phillips and Co. When the firm merged with Arthur Andersen in 1979, you transferred as a partner and continued to build your reputation as an insolvency practitioner. So please enlighten us all on these early days in your career, David.
Well, in the early days, sometimes be described as the best days.
Yes.
It was fancy free. It was, I didn't have the experience that you get with age, and so you went out into the world and did the best that you could, and that's what I did. I joined. My parents actually introduced me to the Bernard Phillips practice.
Mm.
And we did very well. We joined up with Arthur Andersen in 1982, and I became a partner there a year or two later. Actually, I became a partner there in 1982, having joined, the practice had joined up in 1979. So it was quite some journey. Arthur Andersen was a brilliant firm.
Mm.
But I actually ended up leaving Arthur Andersen, and I decided to start my own business, my own practice of Buchler Phillips. Peter Phillips joined me, and we started that in 1988, and then grew that practice. We ended up with about 200 people. We sold the practice to Kroll in 1999. Kroll was valued in those days at around 100 million. And we grew that practice. I was on the board, the main board in New York, but I became chairman of Kroll for Europe and Africa. And we grew that practice, and the practice was sold in 2000. Sorry, Kroll was sold in 2004 to Marsh & Cleven in a 1.9 billion deal, and that was an incredible journey.
Yeah, we'll come on to that actually as we go through the show. But when you created Buchler Phillips with your long-term business partner, Peter Phillips, you had an undertaking of several high-profile corporate recovery assignments, which including the receivership, of course, of Robert Maxwell's private estate. Now, that is some story, David, isn't it, really? Because we all remember Robert Maxwell. Tell us a little bit about that. That's an incredible estate to actually overlook as part of Buchler Phillips.
Yeah, I mean, it was there was a lot of work involved. Robert Maxwell was a big character.
It
Um,
was.
he he had built up his own empire over the years. And I remember one of my first meetings when I was involved with Tottenham. I was first involved with Tottenham in 1991.
Yeah, we'll come on to that as well as we go through the show, David.
Yeah, and I had dinner with Robert Maxwell, and I was talking about the football and his work at Oxford and everything else.
Oh, yeah. He was involved with Oxford, wasn't he? Oxford United. What was that? Yes.
I had dinner with him at Harry's Bar, and we had finished our dinner. He was leaving, and he wanted to keep very much in touch. And he gave me a list of telephone numbers where I could contact him, including on his plane, on his boat, in New York, or
incredible.
In London, or whatever else it was. He was a real character.
Yeah.
Certainly the business dealings I had with him were very straightforward.
Good. That's good to hear. A great story too. I mean, whilst at Buchler Phillips as well, you was acquired, as you said earlier, in 1999 by global consulting firm Kroll Incorporated. After which you did become the new parents chairman for Europe and Africa until 2003, which you mentioned earlier as well. But during that year, you also served as president of R3, the Association of Business Recovery Professionals. I mean, it's a busy time, David. I mean, tell us more about this, the president of R3. That's an interesting story.
Well, R3 is the main body that looks after all the recovery and reconstruction professionals.
Yeah.
It's an immensely brilliant organization. I had the privilege of becoming chairman.
Excellent.
Of R3, president of R3, for a year, and R3 still goes today, and it's looking after the profession and representing all of the professionals that work within that industry.
Yes. Well, that's great. A great role to have. Absolutely fantastic role, and fits perfectly into your background as well, doesn't it? With your chartered accountancy and with what Buchler Phillips do now, of course. So it's fantastic.
Yeah, because it still works in that field.
Yes.
He was very successful looking after quite a lot of either individuals or companies that have found difficult times.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then, of course, in April 2008, it was reported that you were leading a private equity-backed approach to buying Kroll back from its then parent, Marsh & McLennan, which I understand meant buying back Buchler Phillips. I mean, so how did that all work out, David? Getting Buchler Phillips back into your grips, your hands to work with?
That was a very interesting period. I teamed up with Jules Kroll. We did make a bid for we did make a bid to buy back from Marshall McLennan
Yes.
the Kroll business, because they had decided to sell the Kroll business, and we teamed up. We made an offer of around 800 million,
Wow.
and eventually the business was sold for 1.2 billion
Wow.
to an American fund. And I remember saying to Jules at the time, who wanted to buy this, his business back, I said to him, I said, if we'd lost by 10 million, you would kick the door down. When you lose by 400 million,
Oof. Yes.
Thank you very much. We tried. And you let somebody else take it on, which they did. And in due course, I know that the business was eventually, I think 2016, it was resold again.
Yes. What was it sold for again then, David? Silly more.
Actually, but I think quite a bit less.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yes. Interesting story. And also in 2008, you entered the bid process to acquire stricken high street retailer Woolworths. Now, we all remember Woolies, don't we? I mean, I used to buy my records at Woolworths back in the day. So how did that all work out, David? Woolies, good old Woolies.
Well,
Don't see them anymore.
yes, we certainly need to try. But I think Woolworths at that stage was one of the first ones that had got so many branches, so many, so many different shops.
Yeah.
Had landlords coming out of their ears, and they couldn't pay. They couldn't just meet the bill to landlords.
Wow.
Never mind to its own staff. It was a very difficult period for Woolworths, but it was an institution,
It was. Yeah.
and a lot of people remember it today. But it's now sort of really disappeared, and I think people have tried to take it online and deal with businesses, online as opposed to through a shop front.
Absolutely, indeed. I mean, I do remember going to some country many years ago after Woolworths had failed here in the UK. And I did see a Woolworths brand shop in one of these high streets. I forget which country it was now. So they're obviously operating, or the brand was operating overseas in some way, shape, or form. But it was good to see, really. Good to see. Well,
There was Atom, and actually there was C&A, if you remember.
oh, I do, yes. They were the same.
Another brand that disappeared in the UK.
Did you have anything to do with that, David, C&A?
Still exists in Germany.
It's incredible, isn't it? How some of these brands disappear, yet they still come up in some countries somewhere in some shape or form.
Yeah, that is the high street today has changed, and it's changing enormously because of all the costs and the fact that it's been a difficult period post-COVID.
Oh, tell me about it.
And a lot of businesses have suffered as a result.
They have and still are, aren't they? Let's be honest. That was a bad period for a lot of people, not just in this country, but around the world. I mean, I suffered personally, I have to say, through COVID from a business perspective. But we fight back, don't we, David? That's what we do. It's nature.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's exactly right.
Exactly. And you're also noted for forming your independent business, DB Consultants, in, I think, 2005. And David, you spent the 10 years that followed focusing on a diverse portfolio of complex restructuring and turnaround assignments which both publicly listed and private companies, often working as chairman in these organisations as well. The most notable of these were the lead in fraud investigation at Langbar International, as well as chairing Sports Management Group CSS Stella, I think they were called, and Restructuring, former e-security group, Baltimore Technologies. Now, I remember Baltimore because I worked in the security business, still doing at times. Some big businesses there, David, and huge global enterprises. You are indeed a very astute businessman, aren't you? I mean, that's incredible.
Yes, one day I'll be able to perhaps write a book and tell my children all of the stories. Of course, a lot of them are very private. Yeah, a lot of the turnaround work that I do today is very private and is not for publicity. But,
Indeed.
But it is. It's very important work because people in the turnaround profession,
Yes.
they know the ways in relation to companies. They know the ways how to save companies, whether companies can be saved, or some of them can't be saved. And there are methodologies and there are ways of doing it that you learn over the years, and I've had plenty of history.
Yes.
And it's been some of the successes have been amazing to be part of. Really amazing to be part of. With Baltimore Technologies, we cleared up a lot of the mess that existed both here, in Ireland, and different places. And the company then was relaunched on the stock market again.
It was, yes, I remember.
And so there are journeys that different organizations and different companies have.
Did Baltimore Technologies get relaunched as a penny share almost, David, back in the day?
Yeah.
I thought it did, yes.
Not quite a share, but I mean, it was that sort of thing.
Yes, I do remember. And of course, I do remember as well working in the security space. That was a huge shock around the world when Baltimore Technologies posted, the dreadful news that they were, potentially going to fail and wind up. It was, and I think it's all around that period.
They've gone right up.
Yes.
Entered the FTSE 100.
Yes.
They've really done incredible work, and then it pretty quickly fell.
Yeah, they did.
As they ran out of cash, and there were a lot of technology companies at that time that had wonderful ideas, wonderful technology, but didn't have the cash to continue.
Absolutely. Yeah, we all remember the dot-com bust, don't we, in the early 2000s, where all these companies were supposedly on paper worth multi-millions and billions of pounds, but of course there was no revenue. It was just crazy. Bad time. I remember it very well. Remember it very, very well. But good business for yourself, David. That would have brought in some business, wouldn't it, surely? Restructuring and doing what you do best. That would have been, I'm sure you would have picked up, well, you did, Baltimore Technologies.
Well, we were very busy.
Yeah, I can imagine. And then in 2009, you also launched a turnaround focused private equity business, Merchant Asset Partners, to raise 500 million for a one-time only fund to invest in UK distressed deals. Now, it sounds like another exciting business investment fund, David. You come up with some great ideas, don't you? It's incredible.
Yes, we do. We do have a lot of ideas. not all of the ideas end up in a positive way, because
That's being an entrepreneur, though, isn't it? That always happens.
yeah, in that particular situation, we did not raise the funds that we were hoping to raise.
Mm.
And that was a time when actually there was quite a lot of financial problems, and the funds and whatever were not in a place where they wanted to invest in the turnaround market. Later on they did, but we were perhaps a bit early with what we wanted to do.
That's fair enough, and that's an honest opinion, isn't it? Absolutely. And that's good to hear. And then you've also been chairman of the Chinese investment group, London Asia Capital, I think since 2011, and of growth capital investor Volvair PLC since 2013. I mean, the question is, where do you find the time, Dave, for all these time-consuming business ventures? It's quite incredible, your background. It really is. I find it fascinating.
We work very hard.
Yes.
Great people with me. So it's not all me. And we built a reputation for doing some great work.
Mm.
And we continue to do that. And it's work which is vital in relation to the economy and in relation to people's businesses, because sometimes people, they work hard, they know what to do in their specific business, mine, but when they get into trouble, they don't know the journey out of that trouble.
Mm.
And they need somebody like me to tell them, to help them, so that they can continue business in a way that makes sense for them and everybody moving forward.
Yeah,
and that's what we try and help with.
Yeah, and you're very successful at it too as well, David. I have to say, having read your past for the show, it's just quite incredible. And then in 2017, you were also appointed chairman of Puma VCT 13 PLC. I mean, the list of boardroom leadership roles continues, doesn't it? Just rolls off the bat. It really does. Yeah, amazing.
Puma is one of the most successful VCTs market at the moment. It's raised 100 and something million pounds to invest in venture capital trust business.
Yes.
Different businesses, to lend money to growing businesses, and to invest in those businesses. And it's been very successful in doing that. And again, we've got a great team. Great team running it.
Yeah, I think you're right. Having the right people around you it provides a huge success, doesn't it? Having the right people in the right places, doing the right jobs, good at their jobs, is always going to be a successful relationship, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Choosing those right people. Fantastic. And you're obviously very good at that, building your teams. I mean, you've been successful over the years, very successful. And putting the right people in the right place is a genius act to do. It really is. It's not easy. And you do it so well, which is incredible.
It's also build up a knowledge of people.
Yes.
And so I'm able to use different people in different businesses where it's required.
Yes.
And that's been good. We've got some very, very good people that we do help.
Yes.
With the work that we do.
That's brilliant to hear. Then, of course, Buchler Phillips was relaunched in 2015, focusing on financial restructuring, operational turnaround, and corporate recovery. So, how is business now with the relaunch of Buchler Phillips, David? How are you getting on these days? Because it's still going, isn't it? fantastic organisation, great firm.
Well, we're busier than we ever have been.
Wow, that says how bad the economy is, doesn't it?
Well, in that to a degree, but we build up with great people. I have great partners and colleagues in the organisation,
Brilliant.
and we've been able to build a business that has been enormously successful over the years.
That's good to hear. It's very good to hear. And as always, I always say business and sport come hand in hand. Two gloves meet together. So, David, we get onto the sporting side now. You have been involved in football, club restructuring, of course, since 1992, when Buchler Phillips was appointed administrator to Harrow and Wealdstone Football Club. I do remember Harrow and Wealdstone. They were around for a long time. So is this your first venture into the world of football clubs, David, or was it your first venture?
Well, there were a lot of ventures that happened in quite a short space of time.
Yeah, I've got a list here, actually. We'll get into that.
Yeah, and that was the first of a number of football clubs that we helped through their financial difficulties.
So what was specific about Harrow and Wealdstone? Was it just the fact that they just didn't get the sponsors or the crowds, the gates, overspending as always, trying to grow too quickly maybe as a club? What was the big problem with Harrow?
It was all of that. I mean, I lived around and I knew the area very well.
Mm.
And sometimes there is money spent in a way which people try to buy success.
Yes.
You can't do it. Sometimes that.
No, it doesn't work, does it? I mean, I've seen it at other clubs where you see them rise through the pyramids, think, wow, what's going on here? And all of a sudden the money runs out and they just collapse, go all the way back down again.
Yeah.
You can't buy success, not like that.
Very difficult. I don't think you can.
No.
You can achieve success with good financial credibility.
Yes.
I remember Leeds tried to buy success.
They did.
Do you remember that?
I do.
In the 1970s, 80s.
Yes.
That period of time. And they were a wonderfully successful club. And then spent a huge fortune, loss of huge fortune, didn't achieve what they wanted to achieve in terms of winning at the very top.
Yes.
And then got relegated, and it's been a difficult journey for quite a long time.
Yes, it certainly has. And then, of course, more recent times when Ken Bates took over Leeds United, didn't he, after selling Chelsea to Mr. Abramovich? They tried again, didn't they, with Ken Bates, and that kind of failed too, I seem to remember. But they're a lovely club, Leeds United. I do like the club. They're still trying to fight back to Premier League status again, aren't they? They failed in the final, of course, against Southampton last year. But lovely club.
They should make it because they're also a big club.
They are. They're huge.
Big support.
Absolutely.
And some of my good friends are Leeds supporters. Yes.
Well, I was there in June at Ellen Road with Tony Dorigo, of course, the ex-Chelsea and Leeds United and England player. And it was nice to go around the Ellen Road, empty, to sort of take in what it was all about, the structure around. And very nice club. Very nice club.
Yeah.
I mean, with your success at Harrow and Wealdstone, Crystal Palace engaged Buchler Phillips to rescue Crystal Palace from the jaws of financial collapse. And I do remember this as well. To come in as administrator, you must have weaved your magic again, David, your magic wand, because just look at Crystal Palace now. They are a steady Premier League side, aren't they?
Oh, they're very much so.
Yes.
And deserve to be so.
Oh, they're a great club too.
They've had some great success over the years.
They have.
Really great success, and a great South London club.
They are.
Yeah,
And a traditional ground as well, Selhurst Park, a wonderful, wonderful ground that I remember years ago when I'd go there. The atmosphere that was created was fantastic. Really
yeah,
good.
yeah.
A wonderful club. So you restructured Crystal Palace, put them back on their feet, and now they seem to be growing, don't they? Year by year.
Well, year by year, and they produce some great players.
They have. They have.
Some really good players.
Absolutely. And of course, now this is the big one. After putting Crystal Palace's finances on an even keel, you're also called in by Tottenham Hotspur, a rather bigger club, shall we say, to say the least. This was during the Irving Scholar era, and you immediately made friends with manager Terry Venables. What a great guy Terry Venables was. What a superb player in the process. And even joined the Spurs board before Alan Sugar, Sir Alan Sugar, or Lord Alan Sugar, I should say, brought into the club and removed Irving Scholar, Terry Venables, and your good self. I suppose, typical of Lord Alan Sugar fashion, you're fired. You know, we all know those sayings. So please tell us the hard facts about Spurs' financial recovery process and the board adventure. After all, you were vice chairman at Spurs between 2001 and 2006. So quite some history, and I'm sure some great stories to tell us too, David.
So I've been vice chairman at Tottenham twice.
You have.
In 1991 to 93.
Yeah.
And then from 2000 to 2006. In the situation in 1991, 1991 was very different to 2000, from 2000 onwards. In 1991, the club had a debt, an overdraft of £10,000.
Oh, really?
£10 million.
Well, 10 minutes to say 10,000 doesn't sound very much. Yeah.
£10 million.
Yes.
And that overdraft was being demanded by the bank to be repaid. And it was a time when the club was trying to work out how best to deal with the situation with the bank. And it was a particularly difficult time. And the club decided that it wanted to look for a buyer that could put substantial money in. And I remember there were lots of people that came out of the woodwork to try and buy the club at that stage.
Yes.
None of them had any money. I remember Tony Berry in one remarkable meeting with a potential buyer. And Tony Berry was one of the directors at Tottenham at that time, turning round to a particular individual and say, well, show us the money. Have you money? Show us where you got the money.
Yes.
And the flustered individual left very quickly.
Oh, I'm sure he did. I mean, I can remember an interview with Ken Bates, and he was asked the question, so how much of your personal money are you putting into Chelsea or Leeds United, Ken? He said, I don't use my own money. I use everybody else's. And that happens quite a lot, doesn't it, David? It's quite something.
Yeah. Well, Ken was a master at what he did.
He was, yeah, absolutely.
How he dealt with things, and he knew, like him or not, he knew his football.
He did. There's no doubt about that. And he did save Chelsea. There's no doubt about that. Without Ken Bates, Chelsea wouldn't be a club today, would they? They'd have gone.
Yeah. I think Chelsea were in a difficult place at that stage.
They were.
And even today, they had Abramovich for 10 years
Mm.
that looked after the club. But today they have very rich people from the other side of the pond,
Indeed.
who are in real dispute with each other.
Yeah, and they don't
uh,
really understand football, I don't think either. It's quite an incredible story. You can't make it up, can you?
you know, I certainly wouldn't want to be in a club with, 40 first team players.
Mm.
A whole lot.
No, it's too many.
It's so difficult for the manager to deal with so many players, and it goes beyond all reason, to be honest. But that's a different story.
It is a different story, completely different story. And maybe you could step in there at some point in the future. I mean, what was Alan Sugar like as a businessman to work with, David? He's quite
Well,
astute, isn't he?
I have to tell you, I really liked him.
Yes, I thought you would say that.
He's not everybody's cup of tea.
No,
And neither am I. And I thought he at that time was able to come into the club, put it back onto a sound financial footing.
yes,
He had a big problem with Terry Venables, which he solved
mm-hmm.
that stage, and because they just couldn't work together.
Yes,
And then he tried to run the football club on a sound financial footing,
which makes sense.
a little bit in similar to Daniel Levy, but Daniel Levy I think has more football experience than Alan did when he went into Tottenham.
Yes,
I think Alan was surprised about how difficult the whole thing was in running a football club, because it isn't easy.
no, it's not.
And but he managed, for a 10 million investment, he managed to, when he eventually sold, turn around 10 times that amount of money
Yes,
when he eventually sold in 2001. But he's a character that is as you see him.
yes, exactly.
He doesn't really change. That is his nature. He's very generous. He's very charitable.
Mm.
And he's a very, very good businessman in all sorts of ways. He didn't, I think he was let down by some of the managers that he had, who didn't really help him in the way that perhaps he might have deserved. But that was the journey he was on.
Absolutely. And he didn't do the club too bad, did he? He had it in his heart to do what he could for the club, and he did what he could do, and he left it in fairly good shape, I think. However, however, it all turned around when the Spurs owners, I think Enoch, appointed you to the post of back on the board again. So your second spell, I suppose, as vice chairman, following the resignation of chairman Sir Alan Sugar, handing you with the responsibility or making you responsible for the day-to-day running of Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. I mean, an interesting turnaround of events, isn't it, David? You're back.
Yes, in certain respects. It's not what I had expected, but it was. it was what it was. And then working with Daniel Levy was very interesting because his vision for the club and what it needed and the journey it was on was a very big vision. And, you can say today, most of which was achieved in terms of the training ground being as great as it is and the stadium being magnificent.
Oh, it's superb, isn't it?
It's superb. And now he's got this last bit of the journey, which is to try and win trophies.
Yes.
But to be fair to Daniel, at the end of the day, winning trophies is very much a footballing manager issue. Isn't necessarily a chairman issue.
No, it's not. I quite agree. They're two different capabilities. You've got the business back end, haven't you, or front end, and you've got the football structure. They're two different setups. I mean, that's why you've said earlier it's difficult running a football club because there are those diverse businesses within the football club for obvious reasons. I mean, it was reported after Alan Sugar resigned as chairman of Tottenham Hotspur, you had only 6 months to earn your Spurs, to say it in a pun term, and to develop a successful corporate strategy for what was a trophy-hungry club. So how did this all work out, David? It's a big task.
There was a lot of work done in the first year, and a lot of it revolved around trying to really get to grips with actually what was the football club. Because when I first went in, I remember going to the training ground and being told by George Graham, who was the manager at that moment, that if I wanted to come to the training ground again, I should phone up beforehand and ask permission. He said, no problem, but just phone up and give us notice and that sort of thing. And bearing in mind, we're talking at that stage of a public company.
Yes.
It doesn't really work to have your chairman or vice chairman and chief executive, that I was at that time, being told, leave this bit to me and, you can look after what goes on at White Hart Lane, but the rest of it is, it doesn't work. And it never would.
Yes, absolutely. Let the manager and the coaches and the players deliver the football aspect, whilst the executives, as yourself, of course, David as vice chairman and chairman, produce what's needed to run the club financially and put the club into a good position financially, and to build the club at a financial business level. So I do get that. I mean, at Spurs, you had been tasked with conducting a complete strategic and business review of the club over the next 6 months or so, including looking at the totality of the football side too, in terms of transfers, youth policy and playing standards, all financial aspects of the club, including what money is available for spending, and review of all operations, including sales, marketing, branding. And that's no mean task, David, is it? But as you say, running a football club's not easy.
No, there's a huge amount to running a football club, and much more so today than in 2000 and in the mid 2000s, because today Tottenham is from a financial point of view one of the big top 10 clubs in the world. And yet, perhaps it has spent a lot of its resources on enabling it to be this amazing club with the amazing facilities and stadium and training and that sort of thing.
Yes.
really quite amazing. But now the concentration has to be on making sure that the club can really start winning and competing at that very highest level.
Yes.
So that'll be the next interesting journey, I think.
Certainly will. I mean, Tottenham did get to the European Champions League final, of course, didn't they? Losing to Liverpool. So tasted that level of football at the highest level. And they were always traditionally quite a good cup side, Tottenham, weren't they, over the years? So, you would think a domestic cup was possible, wouldn't you, really, be it the FA Cup or, the League Cup? You would think that's possible, wouldn't you? But let's see what happens. I mean, after all, you are a lifelong Tottenham fan as well, David. I had to get that one in, and gained a reputation as one of the UK's leading experts in saving troubled companies, specialising in rescuing football clubs, facing struggles far worse, in fact, than relegation battles. Ah, what a journey. Sensational.
Well, I remember one of the clubs that I did look after for a while was Millwall.
Yes.
Millwall was a bit of a difficult situation, but actually we managed to take Millwall public on the stock market and pay off the debts that it had by doing that. And Millwall today is a very secure team in the Championship.
Yes.
Given a bit of a boost, it's got a good ground and everything else. It could do fantastic stuff.
It could do, and it's nice to see clubs like Millwall, relatively small in terms of London, the bigger London clubs, actually still competing well and trying their hardest to get, because they have been in the top flight, haven't they, Millwall? So it's not like they've not been there before, and to hopefully try and find their way back, and it's good to see. But before Millwall, of course, after the Spurs saga, you then helped sort out the finances of another North London club, Barnet, even buying into the North London club before selling it on successfully, I hasten to add. A little different to Spurs, but still a successful venture and turnaround, wasn't it, Barnet?
Barnet was very difficult because you had the Stan Flashman era.
Stan Flashman, what a character.
Another character.
Yeah.
Who's no longer with us, unfortunately.
No, sad.
But he would, in those particular days, he had a Safeway trolley that used to wheel around all the turnstiles after the game had started, pick up the cash, and take it to the inner sanctum.
Yes.
To work out what the takings were that day.
Wow, what a story. That's a story, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there are very old-fashioned ways of things having been dealt with, which are not the same as they are today. They're just not.
Indeed. No, indeed. I'd ever seen a picture actually on I think it was on Facebook of West Ham manager at the time. I forget his name. Actually, when they won, I think the FA Cup in the 1960s, actually carrying the FA Cup back on an underground train back to West Ham United, Upton Park. I mean, just don't get that sort of thing these days, do you? Synonymous with, of course, with the basket full of cash. I mean, it's just, it's mad.
Today we're very woke, and
yes,
and we're in a different cycle of life.
we are.
Lots of different ways, with cars being attacked all the time. You can't go more than 20 miles an hour.
Yes.
This sort of thing. All of this new way of wokeness
Yeah, it's changed. It's all since COVID.
Yeah, and do-gooders running our life. And,
Yeah.
I just don't want my life being run by uh, other people. I want
I'm the same.
my decisions. If I want to smoke um, outside with a drink in my hand, I want to be able to do that,
Of course you do.
um, and not to be told you can't smoke anymore. It's a different era,
It
and
is.
and I just hope that there is a journey for that era that everybody can feel comfortable with that.
Yeah, we're almost sort of ended up into a bit of a dictatorship here. Everyone seems to have forgotten the fact that, we're built on freedom of movement and freedom of speech. Seems to have
Yeah,
all gone out the door, hasn't it?
freedom is a word that doesn't work with woke.
No, it doesn't. I agree completely. I agree completely. And it doesn't sit well with me, I have to say, David. I don't mind saying that. Let's be open and truthful about it. It doesn't sit well with me at all.
Yeah.
I'll always do things. I mean, you can see my backdrop here. My autobiography is called My Way, and one of the reasons for that is that I liked Frank Sinatra. I liked his song My Way. I like the big band music, but also I like to do things my way. Not be controlled by others. But there we are.
Well, a lot of people are in that mode, and actually, I don't have political um, now one way or the other. To be honest, you
Yeah,
know, um,
I'm probably the same.
I've been rather pleased to see GB News come onto the scene,
Hmm.
because out of everything that I would always see, and I watch the news a lot, um, it's the least wokey.
Hmm. Yeah, and that would be my favourite too, if that was the case. Absolutely right. But we've got to live with this, haven't we, in some way, shape, or form, and somehow wiggle our way around it and get on with our lives in the way we want to run our lives. Hopefully we can do that.
But
But back,
let's
yeah,
hope Tottenham can win
yes, of course,
the odd few cups or something like that, because
yeah,
that has to be the journey that Postecoglou is on.
yeah. I could agree as well. And of course, the Buchler Phillips Birmingham office has even turned to the game with the odd-shaped ball. Yes, folks, rugby. Your partner, I think John Kelly, is sorting out the books for Hull Kingston Rovers, the rugby league club. I mean, as I've always said, David, sport and business go hand in hand. So how did it work out with Hull Kingston Rovers? I mean, that's good, isn't it, that you're also in with the rugby world as well?
Well, they're still going. Um, so rugby's been a very difficult place,
Mm.
because there isn't as much support um, for rugby teams as there is for football teams.
No, indeed.
Um, that is not to say there isn't support for rugby, because there is, and you can see at the international level, there is, you know, to make sport. But the everyday game between the different teams, it is more of a struggle, and it's a real cost factor for running a rugby club.
Yep, couldn't agree more.
So that's
So
that.
best
That's
of luck to Hull Kingston Rovers. Best of luck to them. I hope it all works out and you get them out of trouble. But I'm sure it won't be the only rugby club. I'm sure there's others, sadly. I mean, to add a little bit of excitement as well in North London, your eldest daughter, Sarah, married Darren Dean, the son of David Dean, the then vice chairman of North London football rivals Arsenal Football Club, of course. I mean, wow, firstly, a great story, and what a lovely success I'm sure that is. But how did the fans initially react as well between Arsenal and Tottenham? It's a great story, isn't it?
and the game at White Hart Lane. I can't remember which year, but many years ago, when Sarah had just married Darren.
Mm.
And just to tell you, at the wedding, we had Sven Goran Eriksson,
Oh, bless him.
who is a good friend of David's and mine, David Leans and mine, the two Davids.
Yeah.
And it was quite a big wedding.
Yes.
I remember Sarah being asked, who do you support? And she turned around and said, I support my husband, which I thought was just an answer.
It was a great answer.
Never mind before. It was,
A fantastic answer.
I just got married. I support my husband.
Brilliant. That's a great answer, isn't it? It really is. Well, that's a lovely story, though, isn't it? And it shows that love can blossom between Tottenham and Arsenal, and why not? It has. It's happened, and what a great story.
I will tell you at the time, with Erwin Scholar, Paul Boboroff, and the Arsenal directors, there was a really good camaraderie.
Good.
There was no antagonism at board level at all.
Good.
Good friends, and they were, even though they were a team that was, a rival.
Mm.
To be honest, I think it was more difficult with perhaps Chelsea or West Ham than it was with Arsenal.
Wow.
And board level. So just different ways, different people, I think.
Yes, indeed.
In terms of how they deal with things.
Yeah, I have seen personally the disputes between various boards from different clubs, where they go, the away team come along, and of course there's no communication between the home directors, the away directors. There's definitely a brick wall built. It's sad to see, isn't it, really? Because
it's not the right way to do it.
It isn't. I mean, no.
You're talking about a football match. Yes, you are rivals, but one will win, one won't win.
Yes.
Draw.
Intelligent human beings, David. Businessmen, intelligence. It doesn't make sense.
No, Arsenal at that time, and particularly with David Dean as vice chairman, was a club that was run very well, and had proper ways of dealing with people.
Yes, they had structure. I know that for sure.
And Tottenham were outstanding at that.
Yeah, brilliant to hear. That's brilliant to hear. You're also a lifelong opera fan. I've got to get this one in because we're drawing to an end almost. And joined the board of the then financially troubled English National Opera in October 2006. And within months, you became deputy chairman, a position you held for 10 years. I mean, tell us more, David, because you do love opera, don't you? You're really into it in a big way. A nice little story away from the sport.
I wasn't vice chairman for 10 years. I was vice chairman.
Yes.
But not I was on the board of directors.
Yes.
For 12 years. I remember my opera days really starting on my father's knee.
Oh.
My father had his master's voice record player.
Yes,
the old one. And he had 3 operas. One was Tosca, Cavaliere Rusticana, Pagliacci. And they were all 78s.
Wow.
Which used to go round very fast.
Yes, well, I remember those.
Yeah. And I was his changer.
Great.
I would change with them. Each side lasted 5 or 6 minutes. I would be the changer of those records.
Great job to have.
I used to enjoy it as a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old,
Mm,
you know, doing that with my father.
of course.
That kept my ear in, and I remember also being friendly with a colleague of mine at school
Mm.
who was doing music A level. And, I was not great at school. I was a bit of a naughty boy. I didn't work very hard. And when it came to doing A levels, I ended up doing 2 A levels instead of 3 because they never thought I'd get 2, which I did. And I used to tinker on the piano a little bit. And when I had sort of spare time, and I remember being called in to listen to a Verdi's Requiem or whatever when it was exciting moments coming up,
Yes.
and it really got my ear going. And I have loved that music, and I've been involved in that music ever since. I've produced the London International Opera Festival for 10
Oh,
years.
wow.
And we used to put on a lot of events with my artistic directors, Evie Edwards and Elaine Padmore.
Nice.
And Elaine Padmore went on to run the Royal Opera House.
Yeah, names to conjure with, absolutely.
And, it is something that I've been involved in. Now I write reviews of operas on Opera Spy.
Nice.
So it is something that is still in here.
Yes.
Right.
Doesn't go away. Once it's in your heart, it stays there, doesn't it, David? It really does. Same as the football club. Great memories, of course, too, with yourself and your father and your mother with the piano and the changing of the records. Wonderful memories. It's what life's all about. Having those memories that you can always keep forever. So what is next in the world of David Buchler, David?
Oh, God knows.
Great answer, by the way.
Somebody will tell me one day what it is.
I'm sure.
And I'm still working, still doing, still enjoying. That's most important.
It is indeed. Never give up. Never give up. Keep going all the way. You have to. It's what keeps us alive at the end of the day, David. Let's be honest.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Barry Hearn, as a story, Barry Hearn, he's in his 80s now. He phoned me up one day. He said, Lord Russell, he says, I'm 78 years of age. Anyway, we had this discussion. I was putting on an event in Norwich, the World Match Play Dance Championships. It was a great, huge players. It was fantastic. And I said to Steve Davis recently, the snooker player, I said, Steve, who's coming on the show actually, hopefully in the next couple of months. He said, I said, what is it? What is it with Barry? I said, because, he's still working. He doesn't need to. He said, Russell, if he stopped working tomorrow, he'd drop dead tomorrow. And that says it all, doesn't it? You've got to keep going.
Well, you've got to keep going as long as you enjoy it.
Yes, exactly.
I'm enjoying my life and my work as much as I've ever done.
Brilliant. That's good to hear.
It's no reason for me to give up.
No.
It's in being able to help people and deal with areas of work that I enjoy and dealing with the opera in the way that I enjoy.
Yes.
It's just great. It's just a great thing to do.
Yeah. Stick at it. That's what I say. And I know you've got an appointment at 7. I was conscious of time. Not a problem at all. And as always, on the World of Lord Russell podcast talk show, We could talk forever, David, because there's lots more about your life that we could go through as well, and other stuff too, I'm sure. Your life in business and in football too. It's been a huge pleasure as always, and as always, the pleasure is all mine, and of course the show's audience when this podcast is released on the World of Lord Russell podcast talk show and the Lord Russell Baker YouTube channel. So thank you, David. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll give you David Buchler a big round of applause here. Like you can see him with the clapping of the hands. It's absolutely incredible. Do you mind just staying on for a couple of minutes before you run off to your appointment, Dave? Just a quick chat after. I'll just wrap up. Is that okay?
Thank you very much.
Once good stuff. The next episode on the World of Lord Russell podcast talk show is It's a Knockout, where my special guest will be Billy Schuer, who is a former professional boxer. For the majority of Billy's professional career, Billy fought in the lightweight division, but also competed in the light welterweight division. Billy Schuer is a former British, Commonwealth and European lightweight champion, plus the IBO World Light Welterweight champion too, to add to those titles. So a great show to look forward to for all boxing and sports fanatics alike. And of course, exclusive on the World of Lord Russell podcast talk show. And of course, I'm looking forward to seeing you all on the inside. So until then, it's au revoir from him and au revoir from me.